if it's a song towards somebody, then pretend that person is there. Like, raise the stakes. Like, this is the last thing you're ever going to tell that person.
Mr. Break your click, break the system, take your pick. Never put the game on hold if I can't get, don't fuck with my shit. Independent seas, independent split. Reap the benefits. Drop that, let it. But I'd rather sell a brick than work to build your house. My dependencies never fall upon waste use. Yet they slept on me, got a bus just to wake you.
Hi, this is the My Creative Friends podcast. My name is Michael Costa, your host for the show, and in this show we just talk to creative people. We talk about creativity, life, wherever the flow really takes us. Today I'm joined by Arlene. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah. I think how we usually start off is, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into music. Sure.
I'm singer-songwriter from Mississauga. This part is always funny for me in the sense of like, I don't want to talk about myself. Anyway, singer-songwriter from Mississauga. I play piano, guitar. I've been in the scene for now 10 years, hustling and showcasing my original work. I also run a company called Let's Make Good Productions that spreads empowerment through art. We put on events. Right now we're doing live streams twice a week in order to cater to as many time zones as we can, so I can get friends from all over the world to perform. And we showcase original music, and now we have a conversation about different topics.
When you were learning piano initially, did you learn through theory or just like through playing and familiarity? I kind of just screwed around a little bit on my classical guitar class and got a bit of familiarity. Did you learn more the theory approach?
Yeah, we went through the Royal Conservatory, my sister and my brother and I.
Wow, okay.
Yes, and so it was mandatory.
I can imagine.
And it's so funny, Michael, because now as someone who absolutely loves music and just wants to like dive into everything, I'm now relearning all the stuff that I learned back in elementary, high school, where I was just like, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't understand this. But now I'm learning like, oh, that's what these modes mean, or like, that's why I had to do scales and all this technique. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I've seen that you've been promoting some of those live shows and stuff. Is that an idea that you've had to do the live shows like post-pandemic because of the live streaming and stuff like that, not being able to do it at all in person? Or is that an idea that you've already had in the past?
Oh, 100% post-pandemic.
Okay.
I put on events, like I used to put on weekly events and monthly events, and then put a pause on that and did just monthly event, like one monthly event. And that was at West Edge in Port Credit in Mississauga. And we had funding from the Arts Council as well. And then when this happened, and I think everything shut down around March, I thought like, well, how can I keep busy and how can I still promote other artists as well as my own music? So I thought, let me put on these live stream. I called them, so our event is called Wonderfest.
Right.
Depending on like what kind of event we have. Sometimes we have Wonder Woman events and Superman events. So now it's Wonderfest World Stream Series. So that I was like, oh, this would be a cool way to get in touch with my friends that I made when I was over in the UK or when I was over in the States and all that stuff. So that's why there's 2 dates. It's on Sundays at 12 p.m. in hopes that people from different time zones can make it, and then 7 on Thursdays. And it's neat because we've had people from Australia perform, awesome. People from Scotland. My friend from the Philippines performed, and she had to wake up at like 7 in the morning.
You brought up the Mississauga Arts Council, and I wanted to bring that up a little bit. You are heavily involved in like tons of the music stuff that happens. What aspects of the Mississauga Arts like excite you or have you wanting to always be involved?
They're fantastic in the sense of providing opportunities. When I first started this whole dive into the music scene, I started putting on my own events because prior to that, I was auditioning. I went to school for musical theater, auditioning in film and TV, and then I was like, I don't really like auditioning anymore. And then a friend of mine put on her own show. She booked a venue. She charged cover at the door, and she was actually raising money for a trip for herself to go to the States. And I kind of asked her about it, and she's like, yeah, I just, called and then invited all you guys to perform. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So basically I was like, oh, I could put on my own shows. Right. I could play all the time, and I can invite my friends, and we can all showcase our talents. So that's how all of this event promoting and event producing came about. And then with the Arts Council, they had open mics. They actually have now online open mic. But I went there, made a good friend with Heather Christine, who she's such a doll, and she was working with them, and she got me involved with them. And it's just basically asking questions and seeing like, hey, can we make this work, or like, would you be interested in helping me out to do this? And so I developed a relationship with the Arts Council, so much that I host a number of events with them. And that's where you and I met. We met at the Living Arts Center open mic.
That's right.
And that was a great day, because I was very impressed and proud of you sharing your Asian music.
That was terrifying. I talk a lot about like positivity and like the importance of that in a creative space. And
me too.
Right? It's really important, because I feel like if you are inherently a very negative person and you find it hard to find the positive in things or a silver lining, I think it's very hard for you to get into the creative space. I was just wondering, like, if you have an example of a moment where something really negative happened, but you found a way to stay positive during that moment.
It's funny because when you're just briefly saying about, like, you're creating something and then you're like, oh, it's not working, that's a mini failure. There's many of those. Yeah. This doesn't really have to do with my music. It's more theater. Is that okay?
Oh, of course. It's still art.
So this is one of my favorite stories, because I went to a theater college that was like, hey, you're not ready to move on to second year. So either you redo the first year or see ya. So I was like, okay, bye. So then I ended up going to this school called Randolph Academy. It's a performing arts school. It's musical theater. I love this school so much. And I rant and rave about it. And I graduated there. And then I was cast in a version of Romeo and Juliet, which was performed at the Living Arts Center as Juliet. And there's the other actor who played Romeo also went to the same school that we both got kicked out of.
Oh, okay.
And we were both playing the leads, and there was graduates in the cast that were playing our ensemble roles. So just stuff like that. Like, and then the dean from that school came to watch, and then she was like, wow, you've done so well. I'm like, yeah. I've been taught that massive failure creates massive success. Yeah. So it's almost like I want as much failure and rejection. Right. Then I feel like I'm just going to get there faster. So give me all of these no's right now. So.
Well, even in like producing music, I've seen quite a few stories recently where someone made a mistake, like hit the wrong key or did something really weird to the track, and it ended up making that track really unique and different. And so it's also about like welcoming it, because sometimes it'll show you something or introduce a new idea. Having the ability to really express emotion in song is actually really important. I was wondering, like, do you have an example of a song that really took a lot out of you emotionally?
Probably on the latest album, the song called Leave Me Alone.
Oh, okay. That's a great song.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, now that I'm practicing it more and finding Arlene's voice and like really honing on my craft and trying to be more in tune with the words and emotion as opposed to the sound.
Yeah.
Because coming from a theater background, that's been like in the back of my mind. It has to sound a certain way, and
Right.
so I'm trying to break all that. And I've been using this time to find what my real voice is. So when I was recording that, it was in the middle of me figuring out like the emotional voice and this has got to be on the right key, like this has got to be the right notes, which can hinder a performance, which I'm learning.
So that's so interesting though, because you brought up a really interesting point. So did theater help you in having the ability to express emotion in words and in like expressing sadness or expressing anger or happiness?
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's also allowed me to create stories with my lyrics. So I'll write about things that I've watched or stories that I've heard about, and then I'll dive into like, what would that character feel like, or what would that character say? Mm-hmm. So theater has definitely helped me in that respect, for sure.
There are a lot of very talented singers, and there's being a talented singer, but there's also, again, being able to do that part of like expressing yourself emotionally. Do you have tips for someone who is maybe starting up and they're sounding great, but they're having some issues maybe expressing more emotion in their music? If
it's a song towards somebody, then pretend that person is there. Like, raise the stakes. Like, this is the last thing you're ever going to tell that person, or like, you've been afraid to tell this person this one thing, and now you're going to say it. And like, what are those emotions that break? Like, it's almost, we got to get back to being a kid and play house. Yeah. Especially if it's something like that you're not feeling anymore. So some of those songs on the album, they're written like years ago. And how can I make them fresh? Okay, well, maybe today I'll be singing this song for this person. I teach vocals, and when I have students that, I want to grab that emotion from them, I tell them, like, pretend that this person is in the room, they're about to leave, and this is the last thing you're going to tell them. You have to use your words for them to stay. But yeah, I really like stuff like that. It's so interesting to me. So that I've never heard that take on it before, and that's so interesting. It's funny because when someone's trying to cope with something, typically, someone who's not a musician or creative, like, their initial thought process is like, I need to put this person behind me and never think about them again. And yet, as creatives, and especially again as a singer, it's such interesting advice. Like, you have to put that person in the room and act as if it's like your last message to them. And so you're actually, instead of running away from them, you're sitting right in front of them again in order to really tell that story right. And that's so interesting. I feel like musicians are so good at, like, you're so aware of like your emotions, and there's a lot of self-reflection that happens, whereas a lot of people end up, again, just saying, I don't want to think about this, I don't want to talk about this anymore, I'm putting this away, whereas musicians are constantly revisiting it in their music. We watch it in movies and TV, and TV shows and stuff, when those people are like super vulnerable, like we are at the edge of our seats. So I think it's the same thing. Like, we just have to be open, hearts open, and just know that we're safe. So there's a track on your album called Over You, and you collaborated with Nick Name on that. Mm-hmm. What tips or pieces of advice would you give to someone who's starting off and really expressing the importance of collaboration with other artists? For a while, I didn't want to collaborate with anybody because I had and then what I learned about collaborating is that we can learn things from that person that we're collaborating with, and we can learn things about ourselves.
You develop different ways of saying things, or different ways of singing things, or melodically, or different chord progressions. Oh, and another thing about collaboration is you want to make sure that it's people that you really trust and people that you vibe with. Because sometimes I've had collaborations where they always said no, and I hated it. Because every idea, no. Then it, that's not very good for anyone, like, to be creative if you're constantly, saying no to me. However, with Mike, everything, not that we used everything, it's just everything was an idea and you could work from it.
Last thing, I just wanted to thank you, because I remember when, obviously, like you said, we met on the open mic for the Mississauga Arts Council open mic.
Yep.
And first time performing my music, and if you see, it was important to me to do that. It was something I always wanted to do, and did my practice building up to it, and I get there. And even though when I got there was like a few people in the restaurant, it was still like I could see them there, and I was starting to psych myself out almost from the moment I got there. And close to when I got on, I was like, hey, like, I'm terrified. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And you gave me a really cool piece of advice, which was you said, don't look at the audience, look like over their heads. I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. And
I still do that.
No, but it's such a good piece of advice, because everyone uses like the generic, like, oh, like, picture everyone in their underwear. How is picturing people in their underwear going to help me become less nervous? You know what I mean? Like, this makes no sense to me.
I do that because I know how I can get in my head about, like, just looking around, and either you see someone not paying attention, you see someone like laughing, or in my case, I'll like, are they laughing at me? Like, what's wrong, or whatever. But then I'm starting to learn to just let that go.
This has been the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. How was it?
I loved it. Thank you for having me and asking.
But until next time, my name is Michael Costa. I was joined by Arlene. Thank you again for joining me. And this has been the My Creative Friends podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all that funny business, and we'll catch you on the next one.